Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Salatu wa salamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. In the last two sessions, we talked about learning and knowledge from perspective of Islam. First from the Islamic history, and then we spoke about the types of knowledge from the Quranic perspective and steps in learning. And at the end, we concluded with some of the implications in learning and gaining knowledge. Today, we talk about contemporary times in part 3. What about Islamic education in our times? How do we need to adjust our learning, our education in today's world culture? How do we shift the paradigms developed in the past to present, as we live in a different time and space? Today, we will present high-level answers to these questions and describe what fundamental changes are needed in our education and learning process. There are contemporary challenges for Muslims when it comes to education, given what we said about learning and knowledge in the last two sessions. That is, to answer first the question on what is the Islamic education or Islamic tarbiyah or spiritual education. What are we talking about when we discuss educating someone? We said Islamic education started with first word of the first verse revealed to Prophet alayhi salam with Iqra, the word Iqra. Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. Read in the name of your Lord. By the word read, and it's not just to read, it means three things. When you get the book, you read it or get the knowledge, then understand it, and then apply it, implement it. Get something out of it, which means a knowledge that I can understand, one that transforms me, one that helps me change the world. That is the true meaning of education in Islam. All the types of knowledge we talked about above in earlier session are eventually used or applied in these three steps: read, understand, and then apply or implement. It sounds simple, but how can we implement these in a society that is changing at the speed of light, when it's with all its complexity that is involved with it? That is why, as Muslims, to be a Muslim who is connected to Allah, we do need to be educated about the world that we live in, expand our knowledge of the world, our environment and circumstances. Some people think that if we just stick to the old principles, old models, and implement them today, we should be fine. However, that is not enough. The models involved in the olden days do not take into account the time and space. If you understand this, how do you educate yourself? Because the world is changing by the means and the technology that we have today. You know, everything that is related to our spiritual education has to do with this. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ومن يتوكل على الله فهو حسبه. Allah is sufficient for whosoever puts his trust in him. Chapter 65, verse 3. This is a timeless formula. What does it mean? It means you should be an independent human being. An independent human being is, I talk to Allah, I'm connected to Him, I will put in my best effort and rely on Him. And I know Allah is listening because He says, what does He say? وإذا سألك عبادي عني فإني قريب أجيب الدعوة الداع إذا دعاني. When my servants ask you about me, I am indeed close to them. I listen to the prayers of every suppliant when he calls on me. I respond to the call of the one who calls on me. Chapter 2, verse 186. So, this relationship to Allah is something we have to preserve in our society today. What are the challenges today? We live in a modern global culture, which is increasingly becoming more diverse and plural due to faster modes of communication and large-scale economic migration because of globalization. This modern culture is nurturing two things that are essential to understand and teach others. And be careful, you're not going to give the same spiritual education to a person who lives in a desert versus one who lives in a metropolitan city or one who lives in a faraway village somewhere in Africa. It is not exactly the same due to their circumstances, their surroundings, their norms, and living situations. So, what are these two things we need to understand in spiritual education and learning? يا أيها الذين آمنوا استجيبوا لله وللرسول إذا دعاكم لما يحييكم. Believers, respond to Allah and the Messenger when He calls you to that which revives you, gives you life. So it says, O you who believe, respond to Allah and the Messenger when He calls you to do what? To stop two things that keep you away from the real life, the one that revives you. What are these two things? Alienation and addiction. No alienation and no addiction. Look at the world we live today. Look at what we're using today. Means of addiction and means of alienation. The world culture alienates you when it tells you that when you have money and power, good looks, you are somebody. You are noteworthy. This is an alienation. Addiction, however, is when you are told you need something, to like something. For example, Facebook, your cell phone, 24/7, you need it. You must have it. This is what is called addiction by today's world culture. You need more of this or that. Addiction is the opposite of being free with Allah. Of course, moderately using something that is good and learning from it is not an addiction. Addiction is when it never ends, has no limits. Not being free and being with Allah means being slave to something else or someone else. Note, there is no Islamic spiritual education without stopping these two. How am I going to avoid alienation and addiction? And you know, there's a word for addiction in Islam that is called shirk al-khafiyya, a form of shirk that sneaks upon you, one that makes you forget about Allah and no longer doing things for His sake. You're destroying basically your relationship with Him. Some are addicted to alcohol, some are addicted to drugs, some are addicted to music, some are addicted to TV, in other words, binge watching, some to their phones, some are addicted to internet, some to fashion. Addiction is the world culture today. For us Muslims, there's no spiritual life if we keep on being addicted. And the other one, alienation, is when I look at myself and what society expects of me, not what Allah expects of me. The society wants me to have things that are superficial, like money, perhaps fame, position, good looks, etc., etc. And that's it. This is not the way Prophet ﷺ taught us to be with Allah. He taught us we want to be that which Allah wants us to be. So, this spiritual life has to do with freedom. True freedom from everything, being in control and independent from anything except Allah. True freedom is not what society is asking me to do or to be, but who Allah expects me to be. I must know who I am. The point is, any education that does not allow me to know who I am with Allah, or who I need to be and free from all the addictions and alienations, is not a spiritual education I should be seeking. Yes, we all know alcohol or drug is bad for you because you lose your mind. But now, in our societies, beside alcohol or drugs, there are many, many other ways or addictions that make you lose your mind and your time. Useless movies, TV programs that are vulgar, senseless, and stupid, endless games, endless social media. Now people are writing about how cell phones are taking away from the human contact and social aspects. These are things that are ready to take your mind and time if you're not equipped to say, yes, I can use them briefly as a tool to look for something, as a mean, but they can never control me. I use them. They should not use me. Are you ready to say that? Are you equipped to say that? The power of these things is such a way that they use us as we think we're using them. So the point is to fortify our spiritual freedom through right education and learning. Many of you are students in colleges and universities where even the best of these schools, the best of them, smart students are addicted and alienated. If there is no spiritual education, no spiritual connection. Kunu Rabbaniyin, Qur'an says, means to be connected with your Lord by knowing who you want to be. Knowing yourself means you know better than anyone else what kind of addictions you have, what occupies your time. As Muslims, even with acts of worship like salat, our prayers, there is a specified time. As Qur'an says, فَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ إِنَّ الصَّلَاةَ كَانَتْ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ كِتَابًا مَوْقُوتًا. Establish regular prayers, for prayers are enjoined on believers at the stated times. They have a special time, specific time. Chapter 4, verse 103. The fact we have to be disciplined with time means time management is very important in Islam. That means in Islam, one cannot waste time. In today's world culture, if you want to go through this liberation and spiritual education, one aspect will be how to deal with your time and how to be disciplined when it comes to spending time. This is what is expected from all adults, students, and critical thinkers. Education today is not just using your brain, but also using your heart, which translates into how passionate you are about what you are learning, what you are studying, how thirsty you are about the knowledge, how much you are respecting yourself, your body, and the whole being, your whole being. Education today, no matter where you are, can be disastrous without spiritual education, especially in countries with growing economy. One must be very careful. Education without spiritual aspect can bring what? Greediness, selfishness, power plays. More technological development and advancement does not mean more spiritual independence. I repeat, more technological development and advancement does not mean more spiritual independence. You can be economically independent, but spiritually empty, alienated, and void, which is what is happening in many rich and developed countries. They have great economies with individuals who are financially secure, yet their hearts are not at peace, perhaps even morally bankrupt. Hearts at peace is what we should really be after. Once we have that, everything else falls in place. Education today is different. You cannot ask your young adults to just read Qur'an and Hadith and be done. You need to understand Qur'an and digest it in your mind so it can be applied. Same with prophetic narrations. This spiritual independence is not possible without understanding Qur'an. We need to shift our spiritual education from just reading to understanding. Not just knowing Qur'an, as there are many who do read Qur'an and can recite it verse by verse, even by memory, but without understanding it. How is Qur'an going to protect someone if he or she knows it but does not understand it? If you repeat with your mouth but don't get it with your heart, how is that going to help? Best protection is to understand what we say. That is the general meaning of fiqh, which is deep understanding. Later on, of course, fiqh became known as exclusively to be applied to Islamic law, which, by the way, even Islamic law requires deep understanding of Qur'an before you can discuss the rulings. So, this is the spiritual freedom we need to achieve by spiritual education. Now, is that enough? No, absolutely not. We also need intellectual freedom, which gives us intellectual independence, free thinking. A good teacher teaches us not how to think with him, but how to think without him. The right teaching is the one that enables me to think independently. When we look at the teaching methodology used by the Prophet ﷺ, we see his time, we see this whole methodology in play time and again. He taught his companions to think independently. He told them, go and think independently. They used to come to him and ask questions. He never told them not to ask. Even in the Qur'an, even angels ask questions about human beings and their creation. How is it that today in our education system we do not teach students to ask or not be afraid to ask questions? Any question is legitimate. One has to ask questions. You have to have this critical mind and curiosity. That is why every educational organization, like our universities, our mosques, our centers, and even our homes, we must have a free zone where questions can be asked without being judged. That is, without being judged as to how religious you are or how intelligent you are. without someone thinking how good of a Muslim I am. One must ask freely and start with basics. Very basic questions. Do you know why you pray? Why you fast? Very simple and basic questions. You know, in the context of what we've been discussing, for example, do you know that fasting is the single most resistance to the consumer culture? Have you ever thought about it from that angle? In Ramadan, we stop consuming by stopping eating and drinking. Of course, to understand the meaning of it, to feel it. Unfortunately, for some, even Ramadan has entered the consumer culture, where some people buy more and eat more even in Ramadan during the nights. But you see, in this way, the basic meaning of fasting can be lost. Do we understand the basic meaning of fasting in the global culture? It is to say to the world, especially the West, we are staying away from consuming for 1 month by the will of God, showing our independence from consumerism. When we pray, we are spending our time on something that is not about money, it's not about status or power. Because life is not just money. Time is not just money, as they say. Time is not just money. Time is life. And life is with Allah. يا أيها الذين آمنوا استجيبوا لله وللرسول إذا دعاكم لما يحييكم واعلموا أن الله يحول بين المرء وقلبه. Believers, respond to Allah and the Messenger when He calls you to that which revives you, gives you life. Know that Allah is between the person and his heart. So in our society today, we need an education that starts with the basics. Even in our universities where we are getting highest degrees, masters and PhDs, when you ask a simple question on why do you fast, why do you pray, why do you give zakat, you do not get beyond the elementary answers. For example, how zakat in today's economy counterbalances the effects of capitalism, where rich gets richer and poor gets poorer. This means we need to reassess our education system within this global culture by understanding the deep meaning of Islamic principles, to teach what it means to be spiritually and intellectually free. Now, beyond the teaching of basics, we also educate to gain knowledge. To gain knowledge, we need not just scholars who know the Islamic text, laws, and principles, but scholars who understand the society, how it functions, human sciences, and the application of Islamic principles. Perhaps our scholars who graduate with Islamic studies need to be also graduates of human sciences. This type of dual study programs have already started in some countries overseas. This is where, if you want to be an imam or a scholar, not only you need a degree in Sharia and Islamic studies and Qur'an, you also need a degree in humanities. Humanities or human sciences. Is this really new? No. When we look at history and see the requirement for a scholar, we see, for example, in the requirements listed by Ibn Jawziyah that says in order to be a scholar, you also need to know about the condition people live in, what drives the society, etc., etc. In other words, how could you give an opinion or ruling if you don't understand the dynamics within the society. Qur'an and Sunnah should have a link with all the other sciences. Those who teach Islamic sciences need to understand how the world is functioning and the changes in the society. Let's say you want to change country X, nation X. Tell me, what do you know about their society, their culture, their history, their level of education, their economic status, and their expectations? If you want to change it, you cannot ignore the people and these factors. Prophet ﷺ changed Mecca and Medina and eventually the entire Arabia by respecting the people in the name of Allah. Not in the name of Allah, I ignore you. In the name of Allah, I serve you, and by serve, you mean I get to know you. Islamic education means changing behavior through proper understanding. So, change yourself first and then change the world. So, you have to be someone that changes the world for the better. This is what being a Muslim is all about. Driving three things: akhlaq, which is ethical notion, the way you carry yourself; ahkam, the rules, the limits, regulations; and the maqasid, the goals and objectives, the destination. Often people get too involved with the goals and objectives, maqasid, that they sacrifice the limits or ahkam. They want less rules but more objectives. No way, because everything is based on tawazun, balance. Yes, the objectives, but within limits. Yes, the objectives, but within ethical bounds. This is an education with understanding the limits, the behavior, and the objectives. To get it, you need the knowledge of the text and the knowledge of the society you live in, because you need to know the challenges today, asking questions, gaining the deeper understanding of the situation. For example, in medicine, the way it is promoted today, it is a problem because it is all based on chemicals and profits. But we need to have a deeper understanding of alternatives. We talk about healing the body, but not healing the heart and the mind. Today, we know the state of heart and mind have impact on the state of physical body. That sometimes the best way to heal your body is to address the state of mind with things like, for example, meditation, which is part of healing process. We know this as Muslims, yet why do we go toward chemical industry thinking that it is the only way to heal current diseases, where in reality it may not be. It may not be. It is exactly the same in economy. We have Muslims today who want to implement Islamic economy. But Islamic economy is not about Islamizing of the existing means. Rather, a deep understanding and implementing the fundamentals. It is not to Islamize the capitalism. It is not to Islamize neoliberalism by, for example, making halal banks in an ocean of haram economy. Don't get me wrong, halal banking is a positive step, but not enough. Where are the Muslim economists with deep understanding of dynamics behind a thriving economy? Where are the people who are equipped with knowledge of economy and the Islamic principles? Because you cannot be intellectually independent if you don't have the core competency. This is why Prophet ﷺ said, not just to gain knowledge, but to have the control and have a good understanding of it. Do you have a good understanding of the economy? A good understanding of the culture? A good understanding of the society and people's behavior? Well, throughout history, you can see examples of changed societies where those who changed them not only had the knowledge, but also they were close to people and understood their conditions and circumstances. You want to change their lives, you don't just lecture them. You go where they are and learn for yourself first, at the grassroots. So, universities, colleges, masajid, and centers, or whatever educational institution should be close to the people, giving them spiritual and intellectual education by giving them the knowledge of the text and knowledge of the world in order to pave the way for spiritual and intellectual independence. This is the way we change. You know, majority of the challenges with fiqh, understanding the science of Islamic law and jurisprudence and rulings, the challenges of with fiqh is not about extracting them from the Qur'an and Sunnah, but applying them, implementing them in various circumstances. That is where the expertise in other areas, especially human sciences, comes in. So, in today's education and knowledge arena, we have spiritual learning and intellectual independence combined in a balanced way. And as Muslims, this is what we have to strive for. The last point we need to understand as Muslims, we have a mission. Simply put, do we think our mission is to convert people, especially those who live in Muslim minority countries like US? Is this the goal for us? Did Allah put us on earth to convert people? Never. Even da'wah has nothing to do with converting people. Even da'wah, invitation, has nothing to do with converting people. Qur'an says, "Ud'u ila sabil rabbika." Call, invite unto the way of your Lord. بِالْحِكْمَةِ وَالْمَوْعِظَةِ الْحَسَنَةِ, with wisdom and knowledge and fair exhortation in the best manner. In the best manner. وَجَادِلْهُمْ بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ, and reason with them in a better way. Chapter 16, verse 125. You're not here to convert people, rather educate. Allah says in Qur'an to Prophet alayhi salam, وَلَوْ شَاءَ رَبُّكَ لَآمَنَ مَنْ فِي الْأَرْضِ كُلُّهُمْ جَمِيعًا أَفَأَنْتَ تُكْرِهُ النَّاسَ حَتَّى يَكُونُوا مُؤْمِنِينَ. And if your Lord willed, all who are on earth would have believed together. They all would have been believers. Would you then compel people until they believe? Chapter 10, verse 99. If Allah willed, everyone would be believers. You're not here to compel them. You're here to do two things. Two things. And this is the important conclusion here. Number one, لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ. لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ. To be witness over the people. What does that mean? Means so that people can see the Islam in you. So that people can see the Islam in you. So that when people look at you, they say, wow, this religion has transformed her or transformed him in the best way. A contemporary Islamic education will help you to be the witness, لَتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ, That is what you have to do, who you have to be. This is how you convey the message of Islam to humanity. Number 2, وَيَكُونُ الرَّسُولَ عَلَيْكُمْ شَهِيدًا, and the messenger be witness over you that you've done a good job, great job. The overarching Muslim's goal should be to serve humanity by means of education, by demonstrating their values and principles, setting the best examples. As Qur'an says about our Prophet, peace be upon him, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. You have indeed in Messenger of Allah a beautiful pattern, a great example of conduct. Chapter 33, verse 21. Let us be the best of examples today. So, through Islamic education today in our world, we want to see Muslims spiritually free, intellectually free, ready to ask questions, knowing who they are and serving humanity in the name of Allah, ready to give from the peace they have achieved in their heart to others, which means as individuals we must have peace in our hearts, be confident in our values in order to give that peace to others. Another thing missing in our education is courage. We must learn to speak our minds and speak the truth. That means having an opinion, feeling strongly about it, and speaking out. That is, we cannot keep quiet when there are injustices and oppressions. We have to speak out. We ask Allah to protect us from any addictions except to serve Him. We ask Allah to grant us knowledge that is useful for us in this world and time and for our akhirah, hereafter. We ask Allah to grant us the education we need, the spirituality and tazkiyah we need, so we become the witnesses for Islam. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wal asr innal insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa amilus salihat wa tawasaw bil haqqi wa tawasaw bis sabr. Assalamu ala man ittaba'a al-huda.